Hello students, today we'll look into the unit Planning Adult Education Program from the lesson Adult Education. A program plan guides the work. It is the roadmap that gives everyone a direction to move forward. With that guidance and within the parameters of the plan, one can be creative. Otherwise, the entire process will be like wandering here and there with no aim. Unlike school sector, adult education for the most part does not work with long-term fixed curricula. Rather, programs are being planned and revised on an ongoing basis and geared towards the needs of different groups. As adult education is, at least in principle, characterized by voluntary participation, it is essential to investigate the interests of potential participants. But adult education is not limited to individual needs and interests. Rather, adult education programs are positioned in the context of the needs and interests formulated by national and international educational policies, research findings, the institutional mission of adult education providers, and in some cases, the interest of institutional clients. Besides formulating needs and interests, it is the specific task of need assessors to identify latent needs in society. There are different ways of planning programs as well as different types of programming behavior depending on the personal grid of the program planner or the emphasis placed on content, on the target group, and on the didactical principles of the institution and its settings. Problems may always occur, and everybody knows that the best plan may not accomplish the planned objectives, as unforeseeable happenings and new facts can affect its outcomes. But in spite of this, practitioners and researchers have been continuously improving the engineering of program planning, and different models of program planning have been designed. Adult education is a practice of teaching and educating adults. Adult education takes place in workplace, through extension school or school of continuing education or school of general studies. In planning an adult literacy program, one has to consider and decide the community needs and the resources available for use. The areas that are generally referred to adult literacy are: first one, areas of literacy, which includes reading. Functional literacy is often defined as the ability to read at a particular grade level. Next is writing. Written literacy might best be considered to be an individual's capacity to write what she needs to in clear and reasonable accurate language. Math. Numeracy or mathematical literacy usually refers to the ability to perform the basic mathematical operations, that is addition, subtraction, multiplication, division, and whatever else normally needed in everyday life. English as a second or other language. The teaching of English speaking, listening, reading, and writing skills to those for whom it is not the native language. Cultural literacy. Familiarity with the background knowledge of the society. The uses of literacy also have to be considered in any discussion about the subject. Adult learners in literacy programs asked why they were pursuing literacy skills gave three equally important reasons. Firstly, they wanted to improve their employment situations, whether that meant gaining more responsibility on their jobs, becoming more competent at what they did, being promoted, finding a better job or career, or just being able to work at all. Most learners felt that improving their skills could lead to improving their work life and finances. They wanted to be better parents, spouses, and family members. Reading to children or helping them with homework, keeping better contact with faraway relatives, even writing love letters to husbands or wives were all cited as reasons for learning to read and write better. They wanted to be better citizens and to participate in the political life of their communities. Learners wanted to be able to read about and understand the issues in political campaigns or local controversies so they could make their own recent decisions, and wanted to be able to work in their communities to influence or change the things they cared about. In planning an adult literacy program, there is a need to consider what learners want and need. Often, as learners gain competence and confidence, learning itself may become one of their goals, and that is certainly to be encouraged. But don't lose sight of the fact that their lives dictate the uses of their newly acquired skills. There are two general reasons to start an adult literacy program. They are to meet community need and to support a larger initiative. Communities can assess and interpret their own needs in a number of different ways. Once determined to start a program, it's necessary to take a careful look at the community and determine how many people need what kinds of literacy services. But before looking at numbers, one should listen to the community to understand how it views the issue of literacy and what kind of needs resonate with its residents. Some community reasons for establishing a program are economic concerns, immigration, children's education, health issues, quality of life, etc. Literacy programs may be seen either as integral to the achievement of the goals of a larger community initiative, as one part of a multi-pronged approach to a community problem, or as a component of an all-out assault on poverty and other conditions that produce unwanted consequences in the community. Some initiatives that might include adult literacy services are violence prevention, substance abuse prevention, community health, either a general push towards a healthier community or a campaign aimed at the specific health problem or concern, voter registration, economic development, job training, education, specific early childhood or school-based initiatives, and anti-poverty. Putting together a group representative of the community at large to guide the planning will help you get accurate information about the community and create community ownership of the program. Some groups and individuals participate include local government. In addition to someone from the mayor's or town manager's office, a town planner or economic development director may be a good candidate. Libraries. Besides being obvious allies for literacy programs, libraries may be the daytime haunts of the homeless, and librarians often receive queries about literacy, resources and services. Human service providers and representatives of agencies that serve the disadvantaged. Many agencies, especially those working specifically with low-income groups, have contact with many who need literacy services. Schools and other educational programs. The public schools, Head Start and other adult education providers might be invited to join. Law enforcement. The police, probation office, clerk of courts and judges. Health providers and community health programs. Hospitals are often major employers, especially of unskilled labor, and they and community health programs may serve a disadvantaged population that includes potential adult literacy learners. Employers and other members of the business community. Employers may be acutely aware of literacy needs in a community because of their inability to find qualified workers. Labor unions. Union members may have their own literacy needs, and unions are often willing to support initiatives that benefit the disadvantaged. Representatives of community institutions. Service organizations like Lions, Rotary, etc., community coalitions, the YMCA, the Red Cross, social and sports clubs, and veterans organizations. The faith community. Contact with churches, synagogues, mosques, and other religious institutions, particularly those that serve the target population, can provide an efficient way of getting the word out to large numbers of people and can take advantage of clergy's and congregants' knowledge of the community. Key individuals in the community at large and in the target population. People who hold no specific position but who are well respected and who have their fingers on the pulse of the community. Once you have a planning team assembled, the next step is to look carefully at the community and determine the nature and magnitude of the community's most urgent literacy needs. Who are the people that need services? How many people fall into this category? What kind of services do they need? To find accurate answers, it is helpful to explore a number of sources of information. Census data and other statistical records, school systems, human service agencies and health providers, community focus groups, key individuals and pre-existing formal or informal groups rooted in the community. There are 4 elements that go into designing a program. Target audience and type of services. The target audience, like adults or youngsters or adolescents, women or men, and what are their levels of literacy has to be considered. If there are to be any restrictions, there should be a clear rationale for the exclusion of others and for the inclusion of the target group, and some simple ways to identify members of the target group. Running of the program. The answer to this question may depend on what funding is available, since the funder may have requirements about who is to run the program. If not, there are many choices here. The establishment and oversight of adult literacy programs vary widely from state to state and from country to country. Organizations and entities that might establish adult literacy programs in various situations. Government. In many countries, the national government has established literacy programs as part of an overall development effort to improve the status of a particular group or simply to try to alleviate extreme poverty. State agencies. In many states, agencies such as the Department of Education, the Department of Welfare, or the Department of Labor may establish adult literacy programs either as a primary oversight agency for the state or as a direct provider. Local governments. A country or municipal government may decide that a local program is needed and establish one with local funds. National organizations. Organizations such as Literacy Volunteers of America run local programs across the country through local and state chapters. Community-based organizations. An existing community-based organization, often an umbrella organization which offers a number of different services, may respond to a local need by seeking funding for a literacy program, or a separate entity may actually be formed to respond to a community concern about literacy. Employers. Workplace education programs are becoming increasingly common as employers realize that they can improve accident records and increase production by increasing workers' basic skills or command of English. Employers often grant work release time, that is paid hours, which are part of a worker's regular job time, for on-site adult education. Public higher education. State colleges or particularly community colleges may establish adult literacy programs, sometimes as a result of a mandate, sometimes as a response to a funding opportunity, and sometimes as a community service. Schools or education partnerships. Public school systems are often the founders and operators of adult literacy programs. Typically, these programs use already existing school facilities, equipment and personnel. There are several facets to this element. How will the program view students? A program can achieve empowerment goals not by ignoring the educational process, but by emphasizing it, putting learners in charge of it, and helping them to integrate it into their lives. What will take place in a classroom? There is no one right way to run things, and certainly no one right curriculum. But in general, a successful program needs to find ways to present material and education in general that don't repeat what learners have already failed at. Maintain the understanding that all adults should be encouraged to see the value of their own life experience and knowledge and to bring those to their learning. Seek to relate learning in the classroom to the real world and try to help learners find ways to practice their learning in meaningful ways. Incorporate into instruction critical, analytical and creative thinking skills as well as academic subjects. Help learners to set their own reachable short-term and long-term learning goals and to develop plans for reaching those goals. In a group situation, encourage learners to teach one another and to use the group for support. Foster the development of abstract reasoning and of critical, analytical and creative ways of thinking. Encourage learners to struggle with new concepts rather than handing them with answers. In this way, they will actually understand what they have learned and will understand also that the learning belongs to them rather than to a teacher or tutor who has pushed them through it. Who teaches? To some extent, the answer to this question depends on resources. A program that can't afford to hire a full professional staff will have to depend on volunteers to some extent. A program run by a public school will usually have to have a professional staff because the school system will only employ certified teachers. In the best of all possible worlds again, depending to a great extent on resources, a program staffed with professionals would have most or all of these characteristics. Full-time or nearly full-time staff, so they could devote all their energies to the program. A shared vision of goals, philosophy and methods so that every learner is approached in the same way and so learners and staff are working together towards the same ends. Careful hiring practices to assure staff fit. This doesn't mean that everyone has to agree about everything, but rather that all can work together harmoniously and that disagreement leads to productive discussion and the strengthening of the program rather than to bitterness and division. Regular staff meetings and staff development to assure that all staff members stay in touch and learn from one another. If the program is concerned with learner empowerment, then staff members must be empowered also, that is, have adequate control over their jobs and adequate say in the organization, so that it's clear that the organization practices what it preaches. There are several possible sources of funding for adult literacy programs, each carrying its own set of assumptions, regulations and expectations. Public money. This might come from the state or from local government. On the other hand, public money can be the easiest to get and generally comes in fairly large amounts. Foundation money. By and large, foundations require simpler applications than public funders and have fewer restrictions on how funding can be used. Business and corporate foundations established to fund either specific causes or more general good works. Family foundations, which distribute the assets of a family trust to charitable and non-profitable organizations. Community foundations, which draw on both other foundations and contributions from the local community. Local education foundations, which fund local educational projects. Community funds. United Way, Community Chest and other such community funders could be sources of funding. Sometimes They are reluctant to fund a new program, and they almost always require some proof of the organization's financial responsibility and of its chances for survival. Fundraising. There are as many ways to do this as there are organizations, but if it's not done well, it can raise a fair amount of money. Social responsibility of the organization. If they have something valuable to offer, consulting, curriculum development services, etc., you might form a separate, for-profit organization to feed money back to the literacy program. All are interrelated, but looking at each element individually, one has to plan the program. There are some critical essentials in the program planning process. They are conducting the needs assessment, linkage with partner organizations, setting priorities, developing the plan, evaluating the results. Now we have come to the end of this lesson. Do you have any questions?
Hello, ma'am. I have a question. How NGOs are contributing to the cost of education in India?
Oh, that's an interesting question. NGOs have been spearheading the movement to provide quality education to the most marginalized and deprived children of India. With programs in the most remote and marginalized areas of India, the NGO ensures that the benefits of the Right to Education Act reach the most deprived children. The idea is to ensure that all children, irrespective of their origin, are able to go to school, play, interact, and learn with other children of their age so that they secure for them a life of dignity and contribute to the betterment of the economy. Hope this answers your question. Any further questions? Thank you for patiently listening to my lesson. Hope you have all understood the lesson.